Everyone, you're welcome back to the channel. This is Nugo Fashion and thank you so much for stopping by. So in today's video, I'll be showing you the making of this simple shift dress with cold shoulder, and it has inner pockets as well. So please stay tuned and enjoy the tutorial. It's well detailed and beginner friendly. Thank you.
I used test Ankara print for this tutorial. It's 3 yards, and I also used paper stay, which is the interface. So first of all, I folded the fabric into two and I measured 15 inches. I'll explain how I came about the 15 inches. Then I cut the 15 inches out. So for the 15 inches, I measured the circumference of my hip. That's the fullest part of my body, is 40 inches divided by 4, our usual division, the way we do divide our body part. So if the fullest part of your body is your bust, so you divide your bust by 4. Then whatever you have, you add seam allowance. For me, I added 2 inches for seam allowance and I added 3 inches for A-line extension, because the down I'll be making it A-line, so I added 3 inches. Summation of everything will give me 15 inches. The reason for calculating this is just because it will guide me on how to fold my fabric before chucking it at all. So after that, I marked my starting point and I proceed to mark shoulder to nipple point, that's 10 inches, shoulder to under bust 13 inches. I did not bother to mark the half length because it's not useful for this tutorial, and I marked shoulder to hip length 24 inches, and also for the gown length I marked 41 inches and I added 2 inches for M. So after chucking everything out, I marked the circumference of the bust, that's 36 divided by 4, which gives 9 inches. I marked the under bust as well, that's 30 inches divided by 4, that's 7.5 inches. And also for the hip, I marked 40 divided by 4, which is 10 inches. So I connected the 3 together at first and I added 2 inches seam allowance. So for the seam allowance, 1 inch out of the 2 inches is for ease, while the remaining 1 is the actual seam allowance. So you know it's a shift dress, so it should be free on the body, it shouldn't be tight. So that's why I added 1 inch for the ease, and the other remaining 1 inch will be for the seam allowance. So then I proceed to connect the dots again, I mean the allowance. I connected everything. So whatever I have at the hip length, that is the total circumference here now, that is addition of the normal hip and the allowance, which gives 12 inches. I marked it at the M also. So after marking it there, I extended it with 3 inches.
This will make the M to be more free. So after marking the 3 inches, I proceed to connect it back to the hip. So I connected the allowance to the M this way. Then after connecting the two together this way, I proceed to mark the shoulder. You know, we've not even talked about the shoulder at all. So now the next thing is to mark our shoulder. So for the shoulder, you can see the starting point. I marked the shoulder circumference, which is 15 inches divided by 2, that is 7.5 inches. So I marked the 7.5 inches and I placed my taper vertically and I marked 7 inches. So this 7 inches will serve as the armhole. That's where the armhole is going to be. So I connected the lines back. So I have like right angle, as you can see, I have like right angle there. So at this point here, I marked 1 inch in. So I'm trying to cuff out the armhole now.
Marked 4.5 here as well, and at the 4.5 I marked ½ inch, and I proceed to connect the lines together this way to make the armhole curve. You can see how it's being done. Next, I measured what I have at the nipple point. You know, I've added seam allowance, so I have 11 inches already, and I proceed to mark the 11 inches at the armhole, and I also extend it with 1 inch just to give me the slant shape at the armhole. You can see the way it is. Now after doing that, I came back to the shoulder side and I marked 1 inch at the shoulder here, and also marked 2.5 inch for the neckline. You know it has collar, so the neck should not be too wide. As for me, 2.5 is okay for me, so I mark 2.5, then connect it back to the 1 inch to give the shoulder slope. And after marking the shoulder slope, I proceed to cut it out before marking the neckline. So then after cutting it out, I placed it back on the table and I labeled it the back, so which means I cut out the back first. So I label it the back and I proceed to cut the front bodies using the same pattern of the back. So now I have two, the front and the back on each other, and I separated the two from each other. Next is to cut the neckline, and for the neckline, you know, I used 2.5 inch for the width. Now for the length, I used 1 inch. This is the back neckline, and after marking the 1 inch out, I proceed to cut it out. Then after cutting, I notch the middle. You know it's still going to have collar, so this will assist to indicate the middle. And after notching the back, I proceed to mark the neckline of the front, and I used 2.5 inches by 2.5, that is 2.5 for the width and also 2.5 for the length as at first. But because of the opening, I first curved the 2.5 out this way, and I placed the tape back at the shoulder again, and I marked 5.5 inches for the opening at the middle. So after marking the 5.5, I proceed to cut the first 2.5 inch out, and later place the fabric this way to open up the 5.5, the remaining 3.5 inch or 3 inches rather. I opened it up this way, and I realized that there is still going to be collar, so I had to reshape the shoulder again, and for this I marked half inch, that is 0.5 inch on my tape, and I cut it out. So after cutting it out, I had to reshape the neckline as well. So I reshaped the neckline, I measured the half inch again, and I connected it this way. I cuff it back to the normal 2.5 inch. This will help the collar to relax well at the shoulder, so that's why I cut the half inch. You know it will drag the back down to the front, so the collar will be able to relax well. So after cutting it, this is what it looks like. You can see the opening. Then I fold it back into two, and I placed my tape at the shoulder to measure, because I would like to have pockets in this my style, in this shift dress. So for the pocket, I placed the tape back to the shoulder, then I measured 19 inches. This pocket actually depends on where you want it, but I always want it a bit lower than my half length. So my half length is 17 inches, and I used 19 for the pocket. And also after marking the 19 inches, I also marked another 7 inches. I placed the tape on the 19 inches and marked another 7 inches, and I notched the two out. So this is where the pocket will be fixed. Next, I folded the remaining fabric, so I'll use this to cut the facing. So for the facing, the back does not really need facing, but because I'll be cutting facing for the front, I decided to cut for the back as well. So for the back, I just placed it on the fabric, cut out the same shape, and I also did the same for the front as well, but I ensured that the facing is longer than the normal neckline. So after cutting it out, I placed the back facing and the front facing on each other. Then I reshaped the excess I have at the front, because they must align. So I reshaped the excess at the edge here. After doing that, I placed the front facing on the back facing, and I pinned the middle together, because this is the part that will be turned in. The other side will just be stitched on it. You can see how it is being turned in. See the inside. Then this other side, I just top stitch on it. I did not turn it in, I just top stitch, and I ironed 1/4 inch in already. I did the same for the back as well. I just top stitch on it and I ironed 1/4 inch in also. So after doing that, the next step now is to stitch the shoulders together, and this is how to go about that. Just place either the right or the back, either the front or the back, in between each other this way, and pin them down. After pinning, I proceed to the machine to stitch. So then after stitching, this is what it looks like. I've done that for the two sides. So I have this folding in, so this will affect my collar, and I notch it out. So this is how to go about it. Now I have it relaxed. I've done it, I've notched it for the other side already. I just decided to show you how to notch it. You can see I've already done it for the other side.
So I used hemming gum to gum the facing and the bodies together, and after that I picked the fabric and I placed the neckline together this way, and I measured whatever I have there, and measuring it I got 7.5 inches. You know it's on fold already, so 7.5 into 2, that will give 15 inches. So I proceed to fold the remaining fabric into 2 this way, and the 15 inches, since this is on fold, I will have 7.5. I will need to mark 7.5 again, but I'll be adding 1 inch for seam allowance, so which will give me 16 inches. You know, 15 inches plus 1, that's 16 inches, and I marked the 16 inches. Since it's on fold, I marked 8 inches. It will be divided into 2, so I marked 8 inches this way. So after marking the 8 inches, you know it's the collar, so I will be using one to turn the other. I marked 8 inches by 2.5 inches. After marking, I rolled everything out. Then after rolling it out, for this particular collar, you can use between 2 to 2.5. I think that's okay. Don't use less than that. So after marking and connecting everything together, I cut it out. So, and after cutting, I will also still cut another one of this, because it must be in pair. One will be like a lining or a facing to the other. So, and I've already done that. I've cut the other one, the other side of it. So next is to reshape the collar. This is now the real shape of a collar. I hope you understand what I'm saying. This is not the real shape of a shirt collar. So first of all, I will need to reshape this side, and to do that, I marked ½ inch at this point here. I marked half. Then the half is just to give it a bent shape, actually at this edge, to give it a bent shape. You will see the way I did that. I just curve it small. Then after marking the curve out, I marked ½ inch also at the middle here. So I marked ½ inch, and this ½ inch here, it's optional as well, but I like it this way. So I marked ½ inch, then I connect it with just a slope. You can see the way it is. I just connect it that way, and I cut everything out. So after cutting this part, this is just the first part of the collar. This is not the real collar. So after cutting this out, I still cut another part, which is the second part. You know, it's like having 2 steps or 2 layers. So now this is the first layer, let me put it that way. So, and I've proceeded to cut another 8 inches. You can see the width is 8 inches, then the length is just 3 inches. The first one I cut, the length is 2.5, but the length of this one is 3 inches. Then at this point here, I marked ½ inch, and I connected it this way. This will give it a slant shape, and after marking the slant shape, I cut it out. So this is what we have at the end of the day. So this is how it's going to be. So while cutting the second layer, you can decide to cut another half here just to give it a bent shape, but I like it this way, so I'll be leaving it straight. Next is I've added my interface to the collar. You can use collar stay. There is what they call collar stay, but I prefer this soft one because of the texture of the fabric. So now I proceed to pin the edges together and proceed to the machine to stitch. So after stitching, this is what we have. I've given it a good press. You can see I've stitched 1/4 inch in on both sides, and next I notch the middle of the first layer of the collar. Let me just call it that for now. So I notch the middle. Then after notching the middle of this, I also notch the middle of the first layer. This will be the second layer, and this on the table will be the first layer, and I notch the middle of this, but I did not only notch the upper side, I notch both the down and the up of this first layer of the collar. So this is just because when I'm stitching it to the main fabric, if you remember, I notched the back neckline as well. So this must align with the back neckline, the second notch that I gave at the end. So now I placed the second layer of the collar on the first layer, then I proceed to pin them together this way, so you can see the notch align on each other. So I proceed to pin everything together and move to the machine to stitch the pieces. Now I have 3 pieces together, so I proceed to stitch everything on each other. So after stitching, I gave it a good press as well, so you can see the outcome how it is. Next, after stitching everything, I left like 1/4 inch at the edge. I did not stitch that part. So the reason for this is just, I'll be stitching it to the fabric, and the other edge I'll still proceed to iron it out. This particular side is not well opened, so I had to reopen it. Next, I ironed 1/4 inch on this side this way. So this I'll be top stitching it, while the other side I'll just stitch it. You will understand it now. So I pick the main bodies of the fabric, fold it back into 2 again. Then the notch part that I said earlier, I will now make them align with each other. I will align them together now. So I lay it well on the table so you can see. This is the wrong side. So at first I will pin it to the wrong side, the notched part well placed on the notched part of the neckline as well. Just see, you can see what I'm doing. I pin the notched part on the wrong side, then I proceed to the machine to stitch the two together on each other. So I stitch it all around, that is from the back to the front neckline. So after stitching, this is what we have. You can see it's neatly done. So the 1/4 inch I said earlier, I've ironed it in. The next thing is just to top stitch it on the main bodies of the fabric this way. You can see. So I'll just fold it in this way. So when you are doing this place, you have to be careful so as to not to have a rough finish. It must be neat. So that's why I try to use my scissors to fix this particular place in. It's still showing out, so I had to use scissors to pull it inside. I just use scissors to drag it inside, and it's well placed now. Then I proceed to pin. So while pinning, ensure the stitch of the first side that you stitch is not showing. Ensure you pin it on the stitch so that while you are stitching the other one, the first one will not be showing. I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain here, just to give it a good finished work. Then after that, I proceed to the machine to stitch on top. You can see how it's done. The other line, the first stitch, is not showing on it. So then I placed it back on the table. So after placing it back on the table, I measured the 19 inches. I've chalked it out, I've knocked it out. I said I'll be using 19 inches for the pocket side, so I just proceed to pin the pocket area and also stitch the allowance. So I'll not be stitching the pin side. So after that, I folded this fabric, the remaining part, I folded it into 2 this way. So this is just to cut the pockets out, and I measured 8 inches. So this depends on how wide you want your pocket to be. You can use 7, you can use more than 8, depends on you. Then measure 12 inches for the length. I chop that out, and next I cut it out. So after cutting it out, you know the pocket will be two sides, so this is just for one side, and I also opened it up. I opened the middle. You can see it is not compulsory that you open the middle, but I opened mine, and I marked 3 inches here just to give it this curve shape. I really like my pocket having this curve shape. Even though it's not compulsory, you can leave it in a rectangular shape the way it was before, but I marked and I curve it this way. I like this shape, like I said earlier. So having done with this, next is to chalk the part that I will be stitching. So I marked half inch, or quarter of an inch rather. I marked quarter of an inch all round like this. So these are the parts that I will be stitching on. You know it's 2 now, so I'll be stitching the 2 together, and I placed my tape directly after the half inch and marked 7 inches because I left 7 inches for the allowance, for the pocket allowance there. So I marked the 7 inches, and after the 7 inches I chalked quarter of an inch again and linked the lines. So next is to move to my machine, and at this point I marked half inch, so I will not be stitching this half inch. Then I proceed to the machine to stitch everything else. So after stitching, I pinned the pockets. This is the 2. I have one side. You can see the half inch I said earlier. This is one side, and that's the other one. So next I will open it and pin it to the fabric, to the main bodies of the clothes, the notched parts. You can see the way it is. I opened it, I pinned one side to the, let's say to the right side of the bodies, and pinned the second side to the back side of the bodies. So after pinning everything together, next is I proceed to the machine to stitch. So after stitching, this is what I have. You can see it. I've turned it to the right side. For the sleeve, I used my bicep circumference, which is 13 inches, and I added 1 inch allowance, which makes it 14 inches in total, and I divided it with the circumference, the standard measurement for flare, which is 6.28. I divided it and I got 2.22. Length of sleeve is 5 inches. Then I added 1 inch for seam to make 6 inches. So then I added the 2 inches I got earlier. That gives me 8 inches. So I'll be working with this 8 inches now. First of all, I folded my fabric into 2. You can see it unfold, and I measured the 8 inches. So as soon as I got the 8 inches, you can see I measured the 8 inches, and as soon as I have my 8 inches, I fold it again. So now I have 4 foldings, 2 foldings facing the left direction and 4 opening facing the right direction. I hope you understand it that way. Then I try to cross check whatever I have here. So I'll not be using this black side because that's the print side, and I mark that out, and I also wrote the 8 inches I have earlier so as not to make mistake. You can see, so this will be the M side. Then I marked out everything, and after placing it well on the table, I proceed to mark the 2 inches, which is the circumference. So, and I mark the 2 inches all around. You know, I added 2 inches to the length, that's why it gives me 8 inches. So I just mark the 2 inches all around this way to give me like a peplum or a flare shape, since that's the shape of the sleeve in the thumbnail. So after that, I later proceed to mark the remaining 6 inches, and you know it's just 8 inches because I started at the tip again. So I just measured 8 all around this way. I've subtracted 2 earlier, so the remaining now will be 6 inches. And after connecting everything, I proceed to cut it out. You can see I try to confirm the 6 inches for you guys to see. Then I proceed to cut it out this way. So after cutting it out, next I placed it back on the table. You know it's now looking like a flare. When you cut it out, it's looking like a flare. So the difference is just that this one, it's a cold shoulder because there is opening between the shoulder and the sleeve. So, and you can see it's looking like a flare, and I opened one side of it, so this part is opened. So next is to cut another one. This is just for one side of the sleeve. I proceed to cut the other one. Then after cutting, I stitch the hem all around. Then at the up here, I stitched it once, and I use the last tension of the machine to stitch it. So, and I try to gather it this way. I just pull the thread. Just be careful while gathering it, because if you are not careful, the thread can cut and you have to do it again. Or you can stitch like 2 lines if you like, and just be careful while gathering it. So after gathering it, I said I need half of the bicep. So now I have my 7 inches. Initially it was 14 divided by 2 is 7. So after gathering, I have 7 inches, and I proceed to cut 7 inches on my bias tape. And after cutting the 7 inches, first of all, I pin the 7 inches to the right side of the sleeve and stitch on it. Next, I fold it in this way and I pinned it down also and proceed to stitch on it. So this is what it looks like after stitching. So the next is I reshape the armhole. After reshaping it, I proceed to notch another 4 inches here. This is the length of the coat shoulder. So I notch 4 inches here and I place the sleeve this way and stitch on it. So I stitch on both sides. Thank you very much for watching this video to the end. Please like and share the video and subscribe as well. Stay blessed. Bye.